because I obviously have a YouTube channel. That's pretty crazy.
It's insane. It's insane.
Unfortunately, I'm sorry. It's like 400 years in crypto.
Blockchain is the world's crappiest database technology. You get like 3 principled libertarians in a room full of Nazis, right? That can be at risk. You originally subpoenaed us in 2018.
So I guess the most important final question.
Very, very easy.
It is, of course it's a sandwich.
Yeah.
Any creator runs the risk of being deplatformed from any of the major platforms that we use. Well, YouTube is one of them, and we've seen people removed, but this has actually been solved by crypto and decentralization. Jeremy Kauffman is the founder of LBRY Credits, who is actually in a very active and pressing suit with the SEC for whether their coin is a token. We talked very much about that and all of the potential of decentralized social media and decentralized media platforms.
That's dope.
What are the problems with the centralized platforms that we have now, like YouTube, that you're effectively looking to replace?
Yeah, well, I mean, we just saw a ton of this happening nonstop over the last 2 years, where similar to Bitcoin, not your keys, not your wallet, if you build up a following on these big tech platforms, you don't own that following. And all of a sudden, for political reasons or other reasons, that can be at risk. And so with the LBRY system, we now have millions of content creators that own their identities, and those identities can't be taken away from them. So it's that same the same thing that Bitcoin does to money, we're trying to do to publishing, and we've had a ton of success.
Do you find that those content creators are posting unique content to your platform, or are they posting it there and YouTube, and then it's a hedge against the takedown?
Yeah, there are definitely some that post unique stuff or post first. There are a lot that choose to post to both. So most people use it through a website called Odyssey. In fact, a lot of people use Odyssey without even knowing about the LBRY technology behind it. Over 30 million people will watch a video on Odyssey this month. So it's getting really big. In fact, for a lot of people, it's even their first interaction with blockchain. And Odyssey has a really cool tool where if you're a YouTube creator, it can bring all of your content over and allow you to dual publish, very, very easily. And so that's allowed us to onboard a lot of really great content, and then people will start that way, and then a lot of them will then go on to do some Odyssey specific or Odyssey first type publishing.
So LBRY is sort of moving into the background.
Yeah, we want LBRY to become, sort of more of a background technology, right? Like when you go on the internet, you're not like, I'm going to go use HTTP. If you go and check your email, you're not like, I'm going to go use
homework.
Yeah, so that because LBRY can enable all kinds of things. Like there's some people in the CAD community, in the 3D printing community, which has actually become either the second or third biggest use case behind video. They're now launching their own app that's going to be oriented that way. That's also going to be built on top of the LBRY protocol. So LBRY is moving into the background, becoming a more pure technology. Odyssey is the brand that has established itself as sort of the easiest way to watch and access this content. And if you're a kind of more power user, if you're the kind of guy who is not who wants to own those keys, who wants to do full custody, there's still some LBRY branded software. But for kind of the normies, we're not using the LBRY name on anything.
I mean, you could argue that that's the most important thing in the crypto space, is to put everything in the background, and so we don't have to talk about blockchain anymore. We don't have to talk about crypto anymore. You can just go use it.
I agree so much. Something I say a lot at my company, in fact, I've said it so much I don't have to say it anymore, but is that blockchain is a how, not a why. Like, blockchain is not intrinsically good. We don't do things because blockchain, right? Blockchain has to be enabling us to do something that we couldn't do before. Blockchain has to be making something possible that's better than what came before. And users don't care, right? Everyone loves cars. Most people don't know how they work.
Right.
Don't make people understand how this stuff works, and get it all out of the way as much as possible. And of course, there are trade-offs here. But yeah, that's the way we try to orient ourselves is get the blockchain stuff out of the way, just give people a nice user experience.
Yeah, I talk about all the time the fact that a lot of things in blockchain, to me, feel like a solution in search of a problem rather than a problem in search of a solution. Like, I can build something really cool, but why?
I feel that way so much, and I'm a huge blockchain optimist. But
as am I.
I'm here walking
it doesn't
around,
fix everything.
Right. I'm here walking around mainnet. I'm like, do we really need to blockchain that is that, because blockchains, like, I give introductions to blockchains to audiences and stuff like that. And when I give it to a technical audience, I say, blockchain is the world's crappiest database technology, right?
It really is.
It's expensive. It's slow. You're giving up a lot. Now, obviously, you get this really miraculous property that we never had before of consensus without ownership. Fascinating kind of thing, but we give up a lot to get that. And so it's not this thing that we should do everything on blockchain.
Yeah, the censorship resistance and permissionless are amazing, but there's a reason the Visa network is so fast.
Yeah,
right. And so you can't replace everything. How do you deal with then? Obviously, the idea is that somebody doesn't want to be deplatformed on YouTube, so they use Odyssey and LBRY. How do you deal with copyright claims and issues that come in when you don't have that sort of centralized authority that's sweeping it and taking those?
I'll talk about that. I do want to say, like, it's not a network where it's just the fringe stuff. We're talking about over 20 million videos. There are privacy reasons that YouTube is bad. Everything we do is open source. You have more ownership. You have more control. So there's all kinds of reasons. Just in terms of impression for people who haven't been on there, load up the Odyssey homepage. I mean, you'll see stuff that's You'll see stuff that's very mainstream, nothing that's offensive or.
Sure, yeah, did not mean to imply that at all.
No, I didn't say what.
You have to give a disclaimer. You don't want people to think that it's a bunch of like snuff videos and right.
Yeah, right. As you talk to, it's kind of funny how this is. I mean, I think that it's getting less and less this way. But there was this, you talk too much about free speech, you get like 3 principled libertarians in a room full of Nazis, right? And it's not. But we. That hasn't really been the way that this network has gone. But to bring it back to the illegal content, the way that the LBRY network works, the content is not on the blockchain, of course, right? So content, blockchain can't fit it. What we do is we put metadata on the blockchain. So that's who created it, a signature, it's cryptographically verified and signed and all of these things. And then we put a pointer in that metadata to a traditional peer-to-peer network.
Where it's hosting.
Things like, yeah. And so, if someone has published something that's illegal, that metadata and by the way, we'll find out, part of the answer here is, well, we'll find out because the courts, of course, will have to rule on some of these things because we have some laws that are a little bit unclear. So what we do, we follow our legal advice as well as our conscience, right? We want to do the right thing. But what we do is, since the blockchain segments that contain illegal metadata can't be rescinded, what we allow is, and this is something that both our company can do, but actually any agent can issue a statement about other blockchain segments, being illegal or infringing, or even just something like, this is mislabeled, right? So you can make these sort of additional statements. And then what node operators can do is they can subscribe to blacklist certain segments. So they can listen to these statements and say, for example, statements that Odyssey makes that says they've received a DMCA, and that's what Odyssey does. Odyssey says we, Odyssey, have received a DMCA that this segment, contains infringing metadata. And then nodes listen to that configuration. If someone wants to operate illegally, or maybe you're in a country that you don't have to obey those laws, those nodes can still return those segments. But this way, people can follow the laws, of their country. Us as a United States company, any of our nodes, any of Odyssey's nodes, aren't going to return those segments.
You talk about being a United States company, which means you're sort of at the whim of regulators, the courts, and some of that is in focus right now, correct?
Yeah, and I will say, I think, even being outside of the U.S., the U.S. does tend to have this attitude that, our laws.
The long fingers, right?
But yeah, we are. We've been in a court battle with the SEC for more than 4.5 years now, I think. It's coming to a head right now where, like, literally both sides have mutually filed for summary judgment, just like in the Ripple case. And we're going to hear back, could hear back today, and we'll hear back no later than a week from today. And this is 4.5 years, coming to a head right now.
Can you talk about the actual case?
Oh, yeah. So
why you've been doing this for 4.5 years, which, by the way, is like 400 years in crypto.
It's right. We've made all of this progress, and I'm dragging around an anchor, trying to build a company. It has been a real encumbrance. But basically, my company, we have our own blockchain token that powers the network. We did not. Our blockchain is old. It launched in 2016, so that's quite old in blockchain time. More than a year after the blockchain was live, so we didn't do an ICO, and this was during the ICO boom. And even then, we were trying to be a conservative company. We got legal advice. The legal advice that we got all the way back in 2016 was don't do an ICO, but that you can deal in the token once the network is live and if it's decentralized and sufficiently kind of functional. So we went on to sell the token. We made up our own rules and tried to follow them. Of course, the SEC would never comment on them, never give any feedback, and eventually the SEC sued us. So it's really the facts in our case would apply to really almost any blockchain company, because they're saying that basically if an entity sells the token and any of that money then goes on to fund development,
then you're then
unregulated
security
is a security. And of course, there are all kinds of people who contribute to the LBRY protocol. Hundreds of people have contributed to the source code. The majority of people who have contributed aren't employees. So there's and it's a very robust ecosystem where there's lots of different nodes and lots of different clients and lots of different software. And if we lose this case, it will set a precedent that's going to affect, I think, thousands of companies.
It's pretty much you guys in Ripple right now versus the world. It seems like, because if either are deemed securities sort of retroactively, like you said, that's precedent.
Yeah, and the SEC is actually trying to go as slowly as possible. They waited. They were going to hit the statute of limitations in our case. They originally subpoenaed us in 2018. Early in 2018, and they declined to actually bring the trial until shortly before the statute of limitations was going to hit on our first
buying time.
Yeah.
Why do you think they came after you when there were literally thousands of actual ICOs that were probably unregistered security offerings?
So naively, I kind of thought that by being sort of like forthright, they'd come after me last. I think it was the opposite.
Don't they tell you to come in and talk to us?
Yeah, that was also a mistake that we made. So I encourage, do not listen to them when they say to come in and talk. Absolutely do not do that.
Dangling candy in front of a child.
Yeah, we came in and we did a whole presentation, and they just used that stuff against us, never answered a single one of our questions, never gave us any, literally I've never heard them answer because the whole fight is over registration. They want everything to be a security. So it's in my view, as a kind of logical computer science mind, it's very simple, right? There's this thing over here. Even the SEC, we can debate whether what they've said about Ethereum, but they've very clearly said that Bitcoin is not right.
Commodity or is not a security.
All right. So logically, there must be a set of steps there that other companies can follow, right? Are you saying that the only way to do it is you have to launch it anonymously and hide your identity? Is that they can't?
Because that actually seems like something they would not want.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. Is that what you're saying? Tell me what you're saying, because we've said we'll destroy the entire company. We'll give you our entire pre-mine. You can have every dollar in our bank accounts, right? But what we want is the status that Bitcoin has, right? If I have to blow everything up, if that's what's somehow the difference here, okay, fine. Just tell me that that's what I have to do. They won't tell you that. They'll say seriously, it gives me an aneurysm. It's so.
Do you think they're not telling you because it's malicious, or they're not telling you because they literally don't know and don't want to say anything that could set precedent?
They don't know. They're making it up as they go completely, and they're trying to get everything under their umbrella. They want every single thing. It's a power grab. They want everything, under their umbrella.
It's interesting, because I think the perception is that power grab stigma has come since Gensler, which is not 4.5 years ago. Right? So you're saying this sort of battle for who gets regulatory control over the crypto space has existed for a very long time, and maybe now it's just become a mainstream.
Yeah, I think you could argue that Gensler is worse, but you could replace Gensler. If you would have to replace Gensler with someone radically different, yes, it was bad before, right? So.
That's pretty crazy. So let's go ahead and say you're not a security. Okay.
And the funny thing is also all the financial stuff is cool with me, but we explicitly tried to be the least financial thing possible. We're not trying to be money. I'm not trying to compete with Bitcoin. I love Bitcoin, right? We're not trying to be a reserve currency or any of these things. We think the idea of using a public blockchain to maintain this shared listing of content that's not owned by anyone, where everyone owns their own little piece of the catalog. I just thought that idea was so beautiful. The token has to be traded to make the system work. You can't do a blockchain without a tradable token. And so it's all right, I don't want to be, tell me how can I distribute? How can I do any of these things? And it's so frustrating, because, we're really trying to build something, and they've just been doing their best to destroy it. But to answer it, I think I didn't finish this all the way. Oh, it was the transparency, I think, that did this. I was publishing spreadsheets saying, here's what we're doing. I was publishing these very detailed reports, and they just used all that stuff. They're just like, this idiot, he made our jobs easy. We're not going to go unwind the people who set up 4 different corporations and moved all the money around. We're going to go after the guy where we can download the spreadsheet right off of his homepage.
Or can't you just make the argument that it's a utility token?
Sure, of course, we're making that argument. I think we have a better argument. I mean, we had a third-party independent analysis done, and they said a higher percentage of LBRY transactions were used for their intended purpose than Ethereum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, which is
Ethereum is a much more traded.
Ethereum's traded a lot.
You can trade perpetual swaps on Ethereum.
Yeah, and I'm not saying Ethereum doesn't have
I think Ethereum is also a utility token and not a security.
But Ethereum is traded more than the LBRY token is, in terms of percentage of what appears to be trading versus usage, Yeah.
Well, talk about something that probably is not as triggering, unfortunately, I'm sorry. What's the future grand vision for what you're building, assuming that regulators get out of the way? And is it to literally replace the YouTubes of the world? Is it to compete?
Yeah, so I think, what replaces is never exactly what came before. So, and this is also, I think this is important to remember for people who are interested in sort of alternatives to big tech, like the straight clone. Facebook wasn't a straight clone of MySpace, or whenever
MySpace was better, but
right, Google wasn't.
I love MySpace. I love MySpace, man. You embed music.
So it will be this kind of evolution, but I think that LBRY can become this shared global protocol for publishing, where like anyone who is creating things will have a handle on that network, and they'll own that handle. They'll use that handle to say, hey world, kind of these are the things that I've made. They'll set the rules by which they can be accessed, by which they can be sold, licensed, this kind of thing, and it will become this marketplace for digital content that is not owned or controlled by anyone the same way that the Bitcoin network is, but serving this much different purpose.
Do you think then that creators theoretically in this sort of utopian future could make as much or more, I would imagine, money owning their own content and publishing on these platforms than they do sort of with the pittance they get on the back end from YouTube? Because we know that there's people who make $50 million a year plus.
Absolutely. So I think I think that whether it's, there's always trade-offs. So is it better for every single creator? I probably shouldn't make that claim on video. But I think, if you look at the sort of rent that these middlemen are getting, frequently 30, 40, 50% or more, that is a share that they are getting, a rent share that's sort of beyond, I think, what's appropriate. I also think that the indie content creator, the little guy that gets kind of screwed even more disproportionately. I think YouTube has become all about the kind of the big sure. creator and so on. So so like, I don't know, is our system better for PewDiePie? I don't know. Is it better for like 95+% of creators? I think it will end up being that way. Yeah.
So now that LBRY is sort of becoming the technology in the background that we don't talk about, what else can be built using it? Can we decentralize social media?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is, and this is some of the active development on LBRY currently is, and your identities are already like fairly portable, but there's always like usability improvements to get made, and we want that. Where else can you bring that identity into? What other systems can that be brought into? That's definitely something that we're pushing, because the network has so many handles on it, and it's not just crypto users. I mean, these are big content creators who have established these handles, who have built up reputation over time, because there's this whole reputation and staking system as well. And so, we think there's really something here, and how can that be brought into other places? Because we're also, my attitude is, not to be jealous. I want to do things in this, open way, and make these things, more portable and be more interoperable.
It's interesting to talk to you about it, because I obviously have a YouTube channel, and I do not have a presence on your platform, but I believe in the ethos of everything you're saying. So how do we get me and everyone else to transfer?
So it's so easy. If you go to odyssey.com, when you create an account, you can check a box and you prove that you own a YouTube account, and we'll bring everything over, every video, both your past catalog and going forward. So it's like literally.
So you don't have to co-publish. You don't have to go over there and publish.
So it's not all this additional overhead for you. Your channel will, of course, do better if you also engage over there, right? If so it is good to check your notifications and reply to the comments and that kind of thing. But it's very low overhead. It's really easy. Like, completely non-technical, non-crypto users. Like, this isn't like some of these like Web3 wallets where there's all this complex setup, it's very, very easy to get started. And honestly, the way that we start you is you do start with a custodial wallet. You can later download that wallet and leave if you want to, but Odyssey starts you with a custodial wallet. And so it's very, very easy. Yeah.
Right. So do you think that there's a future where what you're building and others that are building similar things completely replace the platforms that are so popular now?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is the kind of sort of shift in how things are done that matches, not just in tech, but just in business generally, the pattern of how something new supplants what came before, which is like there's something new that's some kind of shift from what was done before that makes it hard for the incumbent to copy it, right? Because if all it was like, oh, we figured out, some new UI or some new trick or some new algorithm, right? They have so much money and so much time that the ability to catch up is there.
Instagram stories didn't exist until Snapchat got popular. Vine was the predecessor to that. This is all, the biggest entity is just copying that thing that's successful and incorporating it into their larger platform.
But because the design here requires them fundamentally giving this thing up that's essential to the status quo of their business, I don't think they'll do it until it's too late. Because they'd have to give up, they've been moving in this direction of more and more control, more and more, sort of stricter and stricter rules, right? And getting you more and more trapped. And so it would be such a switch that I can't see them doing it, making everything open and saying because think about our design, if we ever became evil, someone could launch, Odyssey 2, because all the code is open source, it can all be forked, and someone could just launch it. Could you imagine YouTube being like, yeah, just go ahead and leave. Just go ahead. Yeah, you can take all your content and you don't need to stay on YouTube. They would never do it. Facebook would never do that. And that's why I think that there is this viability for some of these Web3 solutions to flip the Web 2.
Well, it's sort of like you're the product on all of these,
yeah.
And then you move to yours where you actually then become the platform and you can monetize.
Yeah, well, I will say, there's no free lunch out there, right? So someone's got, either the viewer's got to put in money or the viewer will have to watch some ads. And look, advertisers, you're gonna have to watch more ads if you're not willing to tell advertisers about you, right? So you've either got to pay money, you got to watch some ads and tell advertisers about you, or you got to tell advertisers nothing about you and watch a lot of ads, right? That's part of, and so but our goal is always to give people choices. So we're not going to do
you want to watch the ads?
Do you want to watch the ads or do you want to pay?
Listen, I think the Brave browser has become extremely popular in the crypto community and people make those choices in a very similar manner.
Great product.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you want to be served an ad or do you want to block everything? But do you want to earn the coin or not?
Right. And hopefully, this is with getting the base, broader and broader. Hopefully, these will be the products, that ultimately bring all of blockchain and cryptocurrency to the mainstream.
Do you think that will happen?
Yeah, I do. I think so. I'm a little disappointed at times, having been paying attention for a while, because right now we're going through this thing. There's this fight over credit card processing and firearms purchases, whether they're or even just people getting the free speech union got pushed off of PayPal, the other day, and it's the fact that they're still complaining about that, and we haven't solved these problems with Bitcoin or some other technology. And people would say, oh well, Bitcoin does solve them, but not in the sense that people are yeah, it doesn't. I don't care that PayPal that. I want to reach that world, and I thought we would be farther there by now, 5 or 10 years ago, where because it's the same stuff happening that happened 8 years ago.
I always laugh. It's you have that friend who rails against giving their privacy to big tech, as they're texting it to you from their iPhone.
Yeah. But I really want normal people to have a little bit of Bitcoin, not as an investment, but so that when these kinds of things happen, or Trudeau and the truckers, or where
and Ukraine and charity. There's just absolutely massive unsort of seen use cases before.
All of them, and I don't mean to bias them politically one way or another. It's left, it's right, it's everything. And that to me is that's why I fell in love with this technology. And it's not to reinvent, financial casinos or whatever, but on blockchain or some of these things. And some people are doing really interesting finance stuff. There is some really great stuff there, but I want to empower people to be doing these things. And it's frustrating that we haven't been able to make more progress.
What do you think of people who are trying to build all of similar type of things on Bitcoin as opposed to on Ethereum or other networks?
Yeah, I think the design of Bitcoin makes it fundamentally hard. I think the design of blockchain in general makes it fundamentally hard. I don't see blockchain as a winner take all kind of thing. I think it's more likely, just thinking it through it from first principles, I think it's more likely that you'll have different blockchains sort of tailored to different
specific things.
Yeah. The only scenario in which I see that not playing out that way is if somehow some of these sharding models work, where you could actually have independent shards with different properties from other shards, but they're all then somehow part of some larger whole. That's the only scenario. I think it's more likely that you just end up having separate chains with potentially some interoperability.
Well, let's go assume that you win your case, which maybe we'll know actually by the time this even comes out. Are there any other regulatory or legislative threats that you would be concerned about once you get past being deemed not a security?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big one, and we'd be in much better shape. There's still both money transmission issues, which are still really annoying, where it's like, you want people to be able to move $5 or $10 of stuff without having all of this income. And then we also will ultimately probably end up having some big court case over some of the copyright stuff. Now, we've had very few issues with infringement actually, but just because having read the laws or becoming familiar with the laws and understanding how our system works, it's just another one of those things. A lot of these things, it's like, you had like a bunch of laws like about sandwiches, and then like someone invents the hot dog or someone invents the Pop-Tart, and it's like this kind of argument. It's like, is this a sandwich or is this a hot dog?
A sandwich.
Yeah, and it's like, like this idea that you can somehow parse this out of the law. Like my answer is like, no, it's just not there. Like, you wrote a law about sandwiches. That doesn't answer whether a hot dog is a sandwich. We can have an argument about it, but what we should really be doing is like updating the law to just be clear.
You mean the Howey test isn't a great test for 80, 90 years later for what is or is not a security with a new nascent technology that doesn't apply in any way, shape, or form?
It's insane. It's insane. The aggressive, everything's a security. The way they argue it so aggressively, like all these collectibles should be securities. I saw someone argue on social media the other day that Teslas should be security because you bought them expecting them to build out the electrical network, which would increase the value of your Tesla. So therefore, your Tesla is a security.
Well, by that rationale, every single used car on the planet, because of inflation and supply chain issues, is now a security, because you can buy a car and sell it for more 6 months later, because we're living the upside down. So I guess the most important final question is a hot dog a sandwich?
Yes.
Okay, I agree. We're on the same page.
That's dope.